The Season 3 finale of the MGM Plus original horror show From has finally released, and oh boy, there's a lot to digest. This finale took some twists and turns I really didn't see coming, and as a horror show, delivers some pretty gruesome scenes that I'm going to have to censor. Sorry, not sorry. And seeing as it's the finale, this video is probably going to be a little bit longer, considering the script is much longer than the other ones, and it's also the finale, so it's just fitting that we give it a little bit extra time that it deserves. And before we get started, I just want to say a big thank you to all of you for the amazing engagement and positive reception on my coverage of this show. And if you want to see me cover Season 4 when it comes out in 2026, I think, then let me know in the comments. And seeing as this is the last time we'll be here talking about this show for at least another 2 years, let's take a look at this chronologically. This episode has a pretty strong opening with Kenny asking Boyd all the right questions and Ellis activating 100% of his power, and by that I mean putting 2 and 2 together and making 4. 4 being figuring out that Elgin knows where Fatima is. And speaking of Fatima, she's reached the peak of her pregnancy and the baby is visibly wriggling around in there. That's kind of gross. We don't have time for opening credits, we have a finale to get through. Fast forward. We cut back to Ellis, Boyd, and Kenny discussing sort of what to do about Elgin, and Elgin's currently up in Colony House, so Boyd sends Kenny and Ellis up there to make sure he doesn't leave. Good planning, good thinking ahead, Boyd. You're kind of getting on top of this situation a lot better than you have in the past. Meanwhile, Jim and Ethan get back from searching, and Victor, of all people, exits their house and tells them that Tabitha had fallen down after the end of the last episode.
I saw the boy in white. It wasn't very helpful.
But all Victor gets is, don't cut down that tree. Real helpful, this boy, I'll tell you what. So Ethan and Julie go to the diner while Tabitha and Jim sort of discuss what happened. Tabitha explains that when she hugged Victor down in the cellar, she could feel Miranda's presence and felt like Miranda was trying to tell her something. And also, good boy points to Jim in this scene because he actually sits down and engages and listens to his wife, and it seems like he's finally learned to
shut the f*** up and listen.
Jim then goes to the bar and apologizes to Jade for his previous outburst and basically begs him to come help Tabitha figure out what's happening. I'm gonna go ahead and let this clip play out because in just a couple lines of dialogue, Jim humbles himself for all of his transgressions and admits what he doesn't want to admit, which is a really hard thing to do.
I'm scared. Things are happening in my family that I don't know how to protect them from.
Back over to Boyd, he heads over to the church where he finds Sarah sitting, and I gotta be honest, this episode gives Sarah some real justice. And I don't mean punishment for her previous actions, I mean in a writing sense, they give her some serious justice, and Sarah's just brilliant this episode from a writing standpoint. Boyd gives Sarah the rundown on what's happening to Elgin and the fact that something might be talking to him. And Sarah's probably the only other person in this town who understands what that's truly like, to be manipulated, controlled, and taken advantage of by a force they can't possibly comprehend. So Boyd going to Sarah for help is just the natural decision, I think. As Sarah and Boyd are heading up to Colony House, Donna comes barging out of the house, sort of all confused and I guess a tiny bit agitated as to why Ellis and Kenny aren't letting Elgin leave, and understandably so. And when she comes out of the door, for a split second, she sees Sarah, just like the instant that her eyes notice Sarah, for a split second, you can see Donna's whole demeanor just stop and her heart visibly skips a beat. Because if Sarah's getting involved, then it's probably something really bad. And it's little moments of show don't tell like this, you know, like facial expressions and body language and stuff like that. It's little moments like that in this show that just are kind of what made me fall in love with it. Good characters, good writing, and a lot of show don't tell is what I like. But Boyd has Donna clear out Colony House so that they can all talk to Elgin, especially Sarah. Back over with Jade, Jim, and Tabitha, Jade brings up the first law of thermodynamics to try and just make some sort of sense of Tabitha's experience. I'm calling it an experience because, as Tabitha put it, it was more than just a vision. Like, she could, feel Miranda. And the first law of thermodynamics is that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change states. And Jade speculates that, in a sense, Miranda's energy, and I guess people's energy in general, might linger in this place, and you can sort of feel their presence if you just have that connection. And then Jade asks about the little girl who led Tabitha to the cellar where they found Victor, and obviously they saw the little girl out by Victor's truck, so they all head out there. Meanwhile, on this week's episode of Crazy Conundrums of Colony House. Trademark pending. Elgin comes clean about what's happening, except, of course, for Fatima's actual location. He refers to the drowned woman as an angel, and said that everything that's happening is a good thing. Have you seen this? Have you seen her? Have you seen that? Have you seen what she looks like? Does she look like a good angel? No. Does she look like an assortment of interlocking gold rings with wings and eyeballs? No, she does not. Ellis then proceeds to go utterly ballistic on Elgin, and power to you, King. But they kind of need Elgin alive and able to speak, so they get Ellis off of him and they all exit the room. Boyd then asks Donna where she keeps the tools for Colony House, insinuating that he's going to torture the information out of Elgin. Kenny, for the most part, is calm in this situation and tries to be the voice of reason, and Donna's just kind of indifferent about all of this, and it's kind of hard to tell exactly where she lands on the scale, but she tells Boyd where the tools are anyway. So, quick Victor intermission. I'm not kidding, this scene's really quick. Henry goes up to Victor and checks on how he's doing, as he should, as Victor's father. And Victor tells Henry that he wants to show him something that will make him angry at him and that will make him hate him. I wonder what that could possibly be, because Victor's like, he really grows on you. He's an extremely endearing character. Over at the tool shed, Boyd is gathering all his gadgets and gizmos for the interrogation, and lo and behold, since it's the season finale, Father Kotchery is there waiting for him. And honestly, I'm just gonna let this clip play. Enjoy.
You said that you weren't gonna let this place break you. If you do this place is one.
Down in the cellar, Fatima's getting desperate and pretty frustrated, as would anyone in her situation. So she, in frustration, throws the jar of blood against the wall. Then she, picks up one of the shards and tries to, she tries to do something with it. We cut over to Victor's truck, and Jade kind of starts to have a meltdown, which I can't exactly blame him for. And he kind of speaks a little bit for the audience in this scene.
Jade.
No, I am sick. I am sick and tired of getting dicked around. If there is something you need us to understand, you're gonna have to do a little better because we are not getting it.
I don't know if this episode is as intentionally self-aware as it is, but there's another scene later in the episode that just gives the audience some much desired retribution, and it just goes hard as fuck. Moving on, we have Randall, who has honestly had some of the best character development this season. It hasn't been hasn't been shown in great quantities all the time, but the parts that were shown were really good. His injuries back in the middle point of the season definitely were a transformative experience for him, and it really shows, both literally and metaphorically. Randall's just outside the clinic, just having a nice workout, and he starts to hear the cicadas again, and damn, those things are loud, huh? So loud, in fact, that Randall decides, I'm just gonna lobotomize myself. I'm done with this. I can't take it anymore. And thank God Marielle is A, able to walk, and B, actually invested in Randall as a person and genuinely has concern and care for him. Because if she didn't have either of those things, then Randall would have lobotomized himself, and that would have been the end of his character, which kind of would have made me a little bit sad. I guess they are trauma buddies from their experience in season 2, so makes sense. But no, in all seriousness, this is a genuinely great little sequence, and it's full of real heart. Like, you can feel the heart in this scene. It's a really good one. Back to this week's episode of Crazy Conundrums of Colony House. Trademark pending. Will Kenny be able to reason with Sheriff Boyd into not torturing Elgin? Will Father Kotchery be able to convince him with his serious stare? How will Sarah fit into all of this? Who knows? Tune in right now to find out. As Boyd is preparing to rip Elgin a new one, the drowned woman, the angel, sends another photograph. And this time the photograph is of a house. Boyd's house. The house he had just bought and was driving to right before he ended up in this place. Elgin thinks that this is a sign that they're all going home, and that it's time for them all to just leave, and that everything is actually going to work out. But Boyd's been here a lot longer than Elgin. He knows that this isn't over, and he knows no one is going home yet. We'll be right back with this week's episode of Crazy Conundrums of Colony House. Trademark pending. Right after these short messages, Victor takes his dad up to 2 grave sites, and he tells him that one of them is his mother, so Henry's wife. And Henry asks if the other grave is Eloise, and honestly, I should let this clip play on its own.
You said Eloise? I think so. Well, I found her pieces. She was so small. There wasn't much left.
God, that's sad and dark, really dark. Imagine being a child, no older than like 10. And not only do you have to bury your mother, whose corpse has probably been gutted out to a point where it's just, but also burying your sister. And because she was so small, because she was such a small individual, that there were so little of her remains left that you're not even sure if you buried the right remains. That is just so fucked up for all intensive purposes. On a lighter note, over at Victor's truck, Jade is explaining that there's 12 individual numbers on the pieces of paper, and for the briefest of moments, Jim becomes the smartest character in the entire show, because he says,
Aren't there 12 notes in a scale? Music. My mom was a piano teacher. She used to say that music is the universal language. I mean, there are 12 notes in a scale, right?
Good lord, that is genius. The importance of music was even foreshadowed as far back as season 1 when Jade played the violin for Victor. Oh my god, these two threads connecting and finally getting an explanation for the numbers is so relieving and satisfying. And Jim calling music the universal language is just such a nice cherry on top. We get a little scene at the clinic between Marielle and Christy gets Marielle to honestly tell her how she's feeling, and she says, "I'm not okay." And she says that she doesn't think anyone in the town is going to be okay, and I think that really shows how deeply frightened, afraid, and kind of on the verge of giving up some people are. I mean, especially Randall, the dude just tried to lobotomize himself. And now back to this week's episode of Crazy Conundrums of Colony House. Trademark pending. Boyd just snaps at Elgin, and Father Kotchery is there to watch. Doesn't say a word, just lets Boyd knows that he's there. Boyd just whams, and I mean whams, Elgin's hand with the hammer. And I think it's fair to say he does it a few times because A, the state of Elgin's hand once we see it again, and B, we can continuously hear his screams once the camera sort of shifts downstairs. And our least favorite character, Officer Acosta, comes in and causes enough havoc and chaos to put the torture to a grinding halt. For now. Will Officer Acosta ever make this show money? Will Elgin's health insurance cover medieval torture wounds? Does Kenny still want to be Boyd's deputy after seeing and hearing all this? Stay tuned to find out. Over at the bar, Jade and company are trying to figure out how the numbers translate to music notes. And as they start piecing them together, just like one note at a time, out of nowhere, Jade and Tabitha are just suddenly able to hear the music in their minds. They've never heard these songs before, but they can just hear it playing in their head. Jim brings up the whole music box incident from season 2, erring on the side of caution, which I think is actually very wise in this scenario. Jade gets a little bit defensive about sort of Jim insinuating that maybe this isn't a good idea, but luckily Tabitha is there to create a compromise. She suggests that they should play the song, but just not in town, and she also suggests that they should play it at the Bottle Tree. Makes sense. Man, everyone's just turning their brains on this episode. Bonus points for all the characters. And while all this is happening, Fatima is trying to give herself a C-section, but the false angel steps in to stop her, and then her water breaks, and yeah, we're getting there. And over at the diner, yes, I know it's been 40 minutes since Ethan and Julie went to the diner. I bet you already forgot about that. Julie explains to Ethan of how she was sort of time traveling around. Julie doesn't refer to it as time travel, but I am because I'm a nerd. And Ethan says that Julie is a story walker, able to visit any chapter of the story that's already been written, but unable to change the events. So I guess in a sense it's like a closed loop kind of time travel where the time travel was meant to happen and the story doesn't change regardless. So in this scenario, Julie is either completely powerless to change anything, or her meddling unintentionally causes the events to happen, which we're going to get back to in a little bit. Welcome back to this week's episode of Crazy Conundrums of Colony House. Trademark pending. While Officer Acosta wastes screen time with the best characters in our show, Sarah is left all to her lonesome. What will she do? Okay, no doubt, not kidding, uncap no god, this is the best scene in the entire season. Not just this episode, this entire season. Though last episode's moment between Boyd and Kenny comes pretty close, this is still, I think, arguably the best scene in the whole season. Sarah, in this scene, effectively becomes one of my favorite characters in the show. And she was never anything close to that before. She always just felt like a bit of a plot device to me. But in this scene, she feels, acts, and looks like a character. In this scene, Sarah explains to Elgin how no matter how right he thinks he is, no matter how good he thinks her intentions are, they're not. They're wrong. And I'll let this bit play out for you.
Boyd doesn't understand how far he needs to go to make you tell him. He's a good man, and this place has taken so much from him. I won't let it take his soul. I've already given it mine.
Holy fuck. That line goes so fucking hard. This scene goes so fucking hard. Not only does this scene have Sarah expressing how this place turned her into a soulless monster, but it also has her embracing that fact. And she uses her soulless monster self for a good purpose. This place has already completely and utterly compromised her, and she sees no reason why she should let it compromise Boyd after all the good he's done for the people of this town. This scene is fantastic, and there's nothing more I need to say about it than that. Oh yeah, except for the aftermath. Turns out Sarah forcefully ripped out Elgin's eyeball using the screwdriver. Look, I said it was for a good cause. I never said the action itself was good. And that's it for this week, folks. Be sure to stay tuned in till 2026 for Season 4 of Crazy Conundrums of Colony House. Trademark pending. Over the bottle tree, Jade finally starts playing the melody that he's hearing in his head, and we kind of get a bit of a montage here as the song plays. Boyd and company run to the cellar just as Fatima is giving birth, and just when they are pushing the thing to get out of the way and get into the secret back room, the angel... No, fuck off. I'm not calling her an angel. The bitch in the kimono takes Fatima's baby down the hatch that was in that room. The baby right now is kind of just this little flesh sack thing, and I'm not gonna show it just to err on the side of caution and play it safe. Sorry, I need my ad revenue. I gotta draw a line somewhere. Boyd goes down into the hatch, and it does lead to the tunnels. My intuition's better than yours. Back at the bottle tree, the ghost children start to show up, and this is relevant for what Fatima is about to reveal to us. Fatima explains that she saw what the monsters really are before they became the monsters. They were promised eternal life by, I'm just gonna assume is the drowned woman. They were promised eternal life in exchange for a sacrifice of their children. So this murder that happened in the dark was the children being sacrificed for the sake of eternal life. And the ghost children are actually the real, actual children of the monsters. And I'm guessing that the monsters just used to be normal-ass people. Back down in the tunnels, Boyd watches as Fatima's baby grows and grows and grows and grows, and eventually bursts from its... Hold on, let me Google the word. Until it bursts from its placenta, and it's revealed to be... Smiley. It's fucking Smiley. He's back. Sucks that Boyd won't be able to find any more of those worms. Then again, if all the monsters were killed at, like, the same time, like if they all got murdered at the exact same time, or similar times, then wouldn't just, like, I don't know, 14, 15, 13, somewhere around there, just a good handful of people would just suddenly get pregnant just out of nowhere? I mean, like, is that how it would work? Speaking of rebirth, we head back over to the bottle tree, where we finally learn what unkui means. I think I'm pronouncing it right. It means remember. Remember your past life. Turns out, reincarnation theory was spot on. Tabitha was Miranda, and Jade was Christopher. And they were here in this town from the very beginning, because one of the ghost children was their child, meaning that their child was taken and sacrificed for this eternal life exchange. But obviously, Tabitha and Jade aren't monsters, because they wouldn't be here, they would be monsters, which means their child must have been forcefully taken by another for this trade offer. And I bet you anything at all, that it was Smiley who took their child from them. Guarantee it. Alright, last scene, here we go. Jim heads back to the RV to reflect and sort of just, I don't know, get a grasp on himself after Tabitha said she needed some time. And then Julie comes out of nowhere with scratches on her face that she didn't have before, and she pleads her dad to run as far and as fast away as possible. As Jim tries to calm Julie down, the monster in the yellow rain jacket shows up, and I'm gonna play a clip of this for you.
Knowledge comes with cost.
Does his voice sound familiar? Because it should. It is the same voice that Jim heard on the radio all the way back in season 1. Threads connecting. He seems pretty pissed and pretty upset that the melody was played, and yeah, I think you all know where this is going. And fuck. Cliffhanger. Alright, now that we've discussed all the big revelations in this episode, and this season, I guess, it's time for me to come clean. I knew about all of them because of the comment section on the early episode uploads. And I understand that it's my own fault for wanting to read the comments, but I was expecting to find theory crafters and speculators like myself to maybe have a conversation with. But all I found were spoilers and leakers. Imagine if someone had a complete list of every good thing, every amazing, wonderful, awe-inspiring thing that would ever happen to you in your life, and they just started spewing them out at you, telling you exactly what all of your amazing experiences and unique, special, unforgettable experiences will be, and they're just spewing them out at them. They'll still happen, nothing will change, they will still happen, but all the wonder and thrill and adrenaline rush and emotional weight that those things would have carried if you didn't already know about them won't be there. They'll be empty. They'll be hollow. And unfortunately, for me and many others, that is what this finale was due to all of these leakers and spoilers. And to any leakers and people who spoiled the ending for Season 3 who are listening right now, I want to talk for a minute. If you want to learn and spoil and experience things for yourself before everyone else, that's fine. That's totally your choice. Go right ahead and do it. Eat your ice cream early. I don't think anyone's going to judge you. But don't get out everyone else's ice cream at the same time, because by the time they're finished with their meal, their ice cream's going to be nothing but soup. Don't ruin and don't undervalue other people's viewing experiences just because you wanted to see something early. Don't drag us down with you. Alright, glad we got that out of the way. Let's conclude this video and this season of From. I really like this finale. It, of course, ended on a cliffhanger, because this is a multi-season show and they gotta leave you wanting more, which I definitely do. But compared to the other two finales, it felt a bit, I don't know, less tense, but not in a bad way. The overall energy just felt more collected, and characters felt like they, I don't know, had a better grasp on everything. I guess it's just because their arcs are sort of a little bit more complete now, so we can see how they respond based on everything they've learned, which I really enjoyed. Characters either completely had it together and were for the most part relatively stable, like Kenny for example. And then there were other characters, like Sarah, who just went completely berserk and ballistic. It was either calm and collected or completely unhinged for everyone. Jim's murder being by the same monster that talked to him on the radio, especially after telling him knowledge comes with a price, was very poetically ironic, and I really enjoyed that. And Julie appearing right before Jim died is absolutely, undoubtedly, no question in my mind, future Julie. She tried to intervene and save her dad, as I think anybody would, but I guess she kind of caused it to happen in a sense. By showing up, Julie had sort of taken her dad's attention and sort of redirected his focus towards her. If she hadn't shown up, then Jim would have seen the monster and ran. He would have ran, because he wouldn't have been concerned about his family. The only person he would need to worry about is himself. So maybe Julie's responsible for her dad's death, maybe, I think it might be a tiny bit of a stretch, but, it's possible. So within the next 2 seasons, since I think there's a total of 5 seasons planned, I think in the next 2 seasons, we'll be seeing Julie do a bit more story walking and maybe unintentionally causing some events to happen. I'm very curious about how this element will tie into the story, and I'm curious if Randall and Marielle will also be story walkers, because they all went through the exact same traumatic experience, so maybe they have the ability too. I feel like Officer Acosta was written into the story just because Boyd needed someone to beef with. He's kind of made peace with everybody he was beefing with, like his son, Kenny, Donna, etc. Now they all kind of try and communicate and do their best. But Acosta and Boyd fight every time they talk. I feel like that is one of the only reasons they added her into the show, was to give Boyd more drama with other characters. But the problem is, she doesn't feel like a character, she doesn't act like a character, she's very inconsistent with how she's written, and you could remove her from the story and nothing would change. But I guess Boyd also has Khatri to beef with, but I guess they can't whip out the ghost people all the time, because then it would sort of undervalue them, I guess. And at that point, if you're writing them into the story all the time, then it's kind of like, oh, well, why'd you bother killing them in the first place? As for my favorite scene in this episode and this entire season, easily, no question in my mind, the scene between Sarah and Elgin where Sarah, optically impairs him. There is no limit to my praise for that scene. Overall, this season of From had very mixed vibes, and by that I mean the first half of the season and the second half of the season feel very different from each other. Not in a bad or necessarily immersion-breaking way, just in a different way, you know? Also, wasn't it like winter in the first 2 or 3 episodes? What happened to that? I was kind of hoping the winter aesthetic would sort of persist throughout the entire season, but you know, I guess the budget can only cover so much fake snow. To sum up my thoughts on From's third season, I think the pacing was a little bit off in some episodes. The overarching storylines were either moving very, very slow or not at all, or moving very, very fast, and it gave me a bit of whiplash in some areas. But I still love all the characters, I still enjoyed watching the show overall, and I'm definitely hungry to see what happens next. So I guess what I'm saying is, thumbs up from me. Get that pacing straightened out, don't do another episode 7 where all the characters contract amnesia, and season 4 is going to be looking really, really good. Oh man, I forgot how exhausting these review commentaries can get, because man, I am tired. Good thing I have all the way until February until I have to do more of these, but I don't know, I feel like talking about Invincible is going to be a little bit easier than talking about From, because this show hurts my head. But I guess that's why I like it. Maybe I'm a bit of a story masochist, where I like stories that really challenge all of my neurons. If you enjoyed my coverage of From's third season, then please consider dropping a sub. Remember, if we hit 10,000 subs by the end of the year, I will get my first tattoo in celebration. We are really, really close to that goal, and December hasn't even started yet. So please, if you haven't, and you enjoyed this content, please drop a sub. And, you know, if you found my channel through these From videos, then consider checking out the rest of my channel. I guarantee you there's something on here you'll enjoy. And I live stream right here on the channel twice a week with my homeboy Luke, so if you want to do some live interacting with me, then come check out the streams while we do some gaming. And if you really like the way I do things and want to show me a little bit of extra support, then definitely consider becoming a channel member. Not only do you directly support me, but you get a bunch of cool rewards in return, and it's just a win all around for everybody. Shout out to the channel members, absolute legends. But that's gonna do it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, have a good day, everyone.